So team, welcome to the QA plus manual testing orientation session 2. Basically, we are in day 2. So what we were discussing majorly is the software development lifecycle, SDLC, and predominantly we are talking about the waterfall model. Post this, we'll get into Agile methodology. So we were discussing the different phases, and for the kind of an easy handout, I have put all this into, I have put all this into a Excel file with clear roles and responsibilities from the different job families, like from a business analyst or a PM, from a developer, from a QA test team, and even client has a major role in each phase of the life cycle. Especially in Agile with the latest model, we'll engage with client more frequently. But let's look at the remaining phases. So we discussed about initial phase, requirements phase, and design phase. So any questions till now? Design phase, development team or senior designers work on the HLD and low level HLD and LLD, which stands for high level design and low level design. High level design will simply explain you what is the input and what is the output from the system. But internally, how does each low level components are going to work and integrate together is going to be explained in low level design. And it also needs to talk about what is the database schema and what are the different different tables and all the kind of relationship among the tables, and what kind of technologies that we are going to use from a front end perspective, what we're going to use, middle layer what we're going to use, and back end what we're going to use. All that will be explained in low level design. QA has a major responsibility, very major responsibility here, is to prepare a test plan, or it's also known as a master test plan, right? So who will be generally expected to prepare this is people who have 2 to 3 years of experience. Generally, it's from a test lead, but if you're the only member in the team or just 2 members in the team, you may be equally contributing to the master test plan as well. So just to give you an idea at a very high level, what is a test plan contains. Typically, any test plan that you look at, we call it as master test plan. Generally, it's known as MTP. So these are the different components it consists of. Like, what is the objective of this project? I mean, what is this project is all about? And that mostly you can even inherit some of the information from software requirement specification document or functional spec document, or to an extent even BRD or a BRS. So you kind of outline what is the objective of this system. Then you will talk about what is scope of this particular system. We generally call it like in scope. Okay, suppose you're talking about, I think the best example that I can think of is like, let's say we are talking about a payment gateway system. We are planning to build a product like for making the payments. Then what are all in scope in it? Like, are we going to include net banking, credit card, debit cards, and are we going to include any wallets? If the wallets, then what are all in scope for this particular system? So that is basically talking about what is part of this project. And we should also clearly call out what is the out of scope, what we are actually excluding from this project. Let's say we are not including one type of credit card, let's say. So then you should actually clearly call out, this is not part of this project. Maybe the business, terms did not agree, or there is a technical difficulty that we are foreseeing with one type of card, let's say master visa, whatever we have, and one of the type that you are trying to exclude from it. So you should clearly call out. So what is the out of scope? And then you'll actually call about the activities. What are the different activities that the testing team is going to do? And you should also clearly call out if there are any dependencies, like, unless these all the different third-party systems that we are going to integrate, if they have a service to call or if they have an API to call, we cannot really integrate and we cannot really generate the integration between the two systems. So any dependencies that are there before we start testing this system, start testing this product, we should call out. And activities, typically, what are all the activities that we are planning to do? It's not about the types of testing or what testing things, but like typically how you're going to, what are the major activities it's worth to call out. For example, soon after the test plan gets completed, we will come up with some traceability matrix, or maybe we'll come up with a test matrix kind of to identify what to test and what not to test. Then we will create a detailed test cases, and then we will create a test suite, and then we will execute the test. So basically calling out all the major activities from the QA side of it. So then we have dependencies, and then we'll also talk about what are the deliverables that you can expect from this team. You can expect test execution report on a daily basis. You can expect an automation suite at the end of this project. You can expect a defect triage meeting will be led by the QA lead. So you need to clearly call out what are the deliverables that you're expecting. So basically you're informing all the stakeholders like PM team, development team, operations team, and majorly your client, saying that these are the deliverables that we are going to provide from the test side of it. And then there should be, you should also call out like what are the different types of tests that you're going to perform. So what are the different types of testing that you're going to perform? Is it like unit testing is anyway out of scope from our side? Then what else? Are you going to do some integration testing? Going to do some system testing, functional testing, load testing, performance testing, security, accessibility is in scope or not? If somebody wants, like PM wants to know, are you guys doing an accessibility testing or like, is it an out of scope? So then we'll say, here is a plan. Here is a master test plan. Please look at it. We are testing accessibility testing too, or we are excluding accessibility testing. So all the types of testing should come over here. Like random testing or ad hoc testing, like as I talked about it, security testing. So everything should be called out very clearly. All the different, and we should even call out with a priority of them. So every section will typically have a table. Like for example, deliverables will have a table. Types of test will have a table. Types of test, its description, what is a priority, and are we doing it or not. So sometimes what we do, we'll just call out all 20 or 25 techniques that are available. And in the last column, we'll mention whether we are performing or not in this particular project. So it's like a template. Master test plan is a template. By the time you join in a company, you might already have a template. And all you need to do is just filling up the values. You don't need to really do anything from the scratch. So types of test. Then you will have a schedule. You'll also clearly call out the schedule. By this time, we'll complete test cases for module 1, or by this time, we'll complete the test cases for module 2. By this time, we will be performing system testing. By this date, we'll be completing the full-fledged testing, one round of full testing. By this time, we should have, handed over to the UAT, user acceptance testing. So we'll clearly call out the schedule. Of course, there are lots of assumptions and dependencies from the development. I mean, there are a lot of dependencies that you will have from the development team. If the build is not going to come on time, then your schedule will slip. If you find some major issues during your testing, then your schedule will slip. So you have all those dependencies, but still, it's a kind of a schedule plan that you'll make out. Then you'll actually, very important, what are the risks, possibly risks, and uh, assumptions. We generally call what are the risks and assumptions that you're making. A lot of times we'll make some assumptions. Ideally, we should try to minimize, but sometimes we have to assume. We'll assume that from all these third-party systems, the API or interface is going to be available by, let's say, 30th of April this month, and from there we are planning it. But if any delay from the third-party systems will actually delay our testing too. We are also expecting our test lab will be ready by 30th of April. But if there is any delay in, getting the machines or getting the cloud access, will actually also delay our testing. So there will be some assumptions. And very important is you should definitely foresee some risks. Otherwise, you will be at risk basically. So when it comes to risks, these are the three important things. One is risk planning, risk identification. When it actually occurs, when it actually happens, you have to identify. And then what is the mitigation plan? If this risk happens, what am I going to do? So if you don't even plan in the beginning, then suddenly if a risk happens, then you will be at shocked, and you don't know what to do, and then you will start trying to reach out to different teams who are actually help you, and then you'll end up losing the time. So better plan for the risks, what can happen. So risk planning, risk identification, and what if that risk happens? What is a mitigation plan? What am I going to do? For example, the test server goes down. So is our do I have a backup from where I can start, or since it's a cloud, we don't need to worry much about it. All you have to do is just write an email to the team and they will give you another machine with a similar technology, but still you need to install a couple of your components, and that will take some time, right? So but it's worth to call out all the possible risks that can happen. But if you don't even think about them, then you are actually it's not a good practice, it's not a good planning. Okay, so these are all should be part of the so what we do, we'll again create a table under this section. We'll call out what is the possible risk, and we'll explain the description of the risk. Then what is the priority? I mean, if this risk happens, how important it is. Some risks will be of low impact, some of medium, some of high impact. So you should call out the priority. Then who's going to own this? If this happens, who needs to take care? Some risks will be owned by PM, something should be from dev side, and something should be from Q. For example, giving the build to the test. If that gets delayed, then our test will slip. Then who is responsible for that? Dev lead or dev manager will be responsible for to take care of that. If we have some queries or questions from the client, we need an answer well before starting with the testing. Then who is responsible for that? PM, your product manager or product owner is responsible for that. How about getting the test environment ready? My test lead or test manager is ready for, responsible for that. So you'll call out all the risks and the owners, and of course, by which date that should be handled, that should be taken care of. So that will be under risk section. Any questions so far? The another very important thing is test strategy. It's a very important. I'm sure you might have heard about it many times in many different sections. And there's a lot of confusion around it. Like, what is the difference between a test plan and a test strategy? Test strategy is just like one section in your test plan. Test plan covers in a broader spectrum of what is your objective, what is in scope, out of scope, what technologies you're using, what tools you're using, all that. So, but strategy is just like one section where now that you are involving in testing of this payment gateway system, and where we have many different forms of acceptance for the payments, what is your strategy? How are you going to actually deal with so many of these combinations? So that strategy should call out here. Strategy here is, again, you're going to play like a game to find out all the defects in the system. That too, in a very systematic way, you're going to play it, and you will identify all the defects early in the cycle. So we should always be targeted like this. For example, if our test schedule is this, starting from May 1st, I'll just put it like June end. I'm just telling you, let's say you have, this is the time. So which is typically 8 weeks of time. And if you split it into 4 sprints, 2 weeks of one sprint, another 2 weeks of another sprint, another 2 weeks of another sprint, we don't want to see all the major defects coming in the last sprint, because it will be very difficult to fix and regression test it and again confirm that they are working, and signing off by June 30th is going to be a major problem. Rather, your strategy should be that you will test and identify all the critical components in the first week of first sprint, not in the last sprint, or not even the third sprint. So that is how your strategy should be. So you should pick up critical components first, major components first, priority components first. Of course, then how do we identify? Of course, during the discussion of the requirement, during the design, you would come to know which phase, which components are more critical, which components my development team is struggling to really understand and develop, because I can see a lot of issues can happen there. So I need to focus on that. If it is a very simple component, simple module, then you don't need to really, prioritize that as a first. So we will even prioritize all our test cases. So whatever the test cases that we are going to write, 200 or 300 test cases, will clearly prioritize them. What are the P0 test cases? What are the P1 test cases? And what are the P2 test cases? So P2 test cases are like simple, low priority. So you can test them in the third week or third sprint. But P0 and P1 should definitely go in the first and second sprint itself. So if there are any issues, then you can identify. And again, do you want to just do one cycle only, like, one round of testing? Or you wanted to give it to two different people and try to get it tested from two different cycles, so that even if one person is missed out in the first cycle, the other person will be able to identify, and thereby we don't miss out in the system. So how many cycles you are going to do? So all that is your test strategy. Apart from test strategy, we'll even call out like what are the tools that you're going to use, basically. Like, so what is my, as somebody asked today, what is my test management tool? Where am I going to maintain my test cases? From where? Okay, so there is a question like, do we need to do everything in that sprint itself, and then we deliver? Yes, when I talk about Agile, probably I'll be more clear. For now, you can just understand. No, just to answer your question straightforward, ideally, that's how we should plan. Like, rather than picking up the whole system, we should just pick up one feature, trying to do a requirement analysis, trying to do the design, then trying to do the development, testing, and delivering it to the customer, everything in the same phase. But sometimes it will spill over into multiple sprints, and then maybe after 2 or 3 sprints we'll deliver it to customer. So we'll talk more about in the Agile. Yes, we're going to talk about Agile. Defect lifecycle also, we'll talk about that. Okay, so then we'll talk about what is a test management tool. Like, where are we going to maintain our test cases, test management and defect management tool. So we'll even talk about defect management tool. Actually, when I say nowadays, we used to have individual tools like defect management tool separate, test management tool separate. But today, most of the companies are actually merged all these things, and they are calling it like application management tools. So where you can plan from the beginning, from the requirements to the end of the cycle, you can do all that in the management tool itself. Like examples, JIRA is one tool, HPALM, or now it's a micro focus, HP or micro focus ALM tool, right? Trello is another tool. So these are some of the tools where you can actually do the complete management. So you need to explain what tool the team is going to use, and you should give the links of those tools, and from how people can access those tools and everything. And then you should also talk about what is your um, defects categorization. when you identify the defects, how you're going to categorize them. So typically, not all the defects are of same complexity. So we generally call them like severity 1. We generally call them like severity 2, severity 3, and severity 4. I'll talk about these definitions a little later, but just for now, understand like, something major, critical, blocking, very complex issues, will log them like severity 0. Major ones will log it like 2, medium ones will log it like 3, and simple, low critical ones will log it like 4. Apart from severity, defects will also be categorized based on priority. So how important it is to the customer. So we'll say like priority 1 or priority 2, priority 3, or is it like a priority 4? So we need to even categorize. So you need to kind of explain the definition in the plan here, because a lot of times what happens, testing team logs the bugs, but either they'll put all of them into major issues or they'll put all of them into like critical issues. There is a clear segregation, there is a clear definition with a clear service level agreement timelines by when this should get fixed. For example, just to give you what is severity 1 is that all the blockers which are completely blocking you to proceed from the testing, which will make your system crash more frequently, or system hangs more frequently, or application hangs more frequently. Only these things you have to categorize as severity 1. And if you look at from the SLA point of view, these kind of issues needs to be fixed immediately. I mean, there should not be any delay. Development team needs to fix it immediately, because either the testing team testing it, they are totally blocked. In real time, if the client faces this, he is totally blocked. The real usage of the system is blocked. So this needs to be fixed immediately. And generally the maximum timeline that you will have is like less than or equal to 24 hours. Within 24 hours, we have to provide a fix. I mean, 24 hours is also too big time in today's world actually. So you have to provide the fix within minutes. That's why you can see like all these critical systems will be hosted on multiple servers. If something goes down in one of the server, they will automatically bring up the other server. So that kind of SLAs will be available, and which one will call it like severity to some major, for example, one of the major component not working. It's not that entire system is crash, but one major component. For example, user is not able to order items online, or user is not able to cancel the orders, or user is not able to search through filters, right? Some of these components, major components, are not working. It's not that entire system is not working, but one of the major component not working. Then you will call it like severity 2. And what is the SLA typically is like, we'll say ASAP, and it should be less than or equal to 72 hours. It should be like fixed within 72 hours. And severity 3, something like if any test, like one of the scenario fails, let's say one of the scenario fails. What is that? For example, in the credit card payments, there are like 4 or 5 different types of cards. Only one card type is not working. Or even in the one card type, only when I enter the amount, certain amount value, not accepting. Certain value beyond this is not accepting. Even the other card, same card type, if I enter the value below some XYZ amount, it's accepting. Above XYZ amount, it's not accepting. So I don't know, like there is no requirement like that, but my developer has coded in such a way that if it is more than $100, this is not accepting. There's no requirement like that. It should accept any number. Balance point of view, the customer has a balance in card, but our system is not accepting anything beyond 100. So there is an incorrect development of that. So if any of one of the scenario fails, then we will typically call it like severity 3. and this we generally call it like ASAP, as soon as possible. After addressing all the severity 1 bugs, 2 bugs, then this should be logged. And the severity ones are 4s are generally suggestions from the testing team. Any GUI related issues, any alignment issues, some text not properly visible, or any color related issues. So these kind of things. And we really don't put any timeline for severity 4. Sometimes we even fix without, we even release without fixing some of them, because they are not very impactful. They are not very majorly impacting. But sometimes if there is a major issue in the UI, we definitely fix it, because in the UI, if it is there, your customer will easily see it and he won't be able to like it. For example, some of those will definitely fix it. But from a criticality point of view, these are like simple alignment issues, some text, there are objects are overlapping on each other, like overlapping objects. So some of these we call it like severity 4 issues. So when you are logging the bugs, on how do you going to log is these are the definitions. So there is a clear segregation. Like suppose you get into the testing and your team logs everything like save to. Actually they are save to, but your PM team or dev team has a concern. Hey, I'm seeing all the bugs like save to. Like is it they are really save to? What is the definition of save to? Can I know and all that? Then you can share this is what we prescribed in the test plan, and we have shared with you. You guys have read and accepted, and according to that, this they are all major components. So you can categorize the defects over here. And to be frank, priority is optional. It's not in our hand. This is totally depends on client urgency, client need. If the client says this is very important for me, then it will become priority 1. If the client says it's not so important for me, it will become priority 4. So we'll try to consult the client, and sometimes you can give it. For example, I can say like there is a report. Let's assume like this is the best thing. There is a final report, and here the company logo and the name will come, and there is a mistake in the company name, spelling mistake in the company name. Can anyone say what is the severity and priority of that? What do you think is the severity of that first? Is it severity 1, 2, 3, 4? A spelling mistake in the company name of a report. It's a severity 4, because it's a very simple. Okay, did I not write here? Yeah, any spelling mistakes, any text, incorrect text. It's not very complex to fix. They have to just open the code and put the proper characters, you're done. But priority point of view, obviously it's very, very important. Nobody wants to see their company logo incorrect. Nobody wants to see their company name incorrect, right? So priority, I mean, for this, you don't need to ask a client. You don't need to set up a client meeting and ask, hey, how urgent it is for you or how important it is for you. I mean, certain things are very clear. So in that case, you can go and put priority 1. But certain things will not be clear. If things are not clear, then we will, write an email to client, or we will discuss with client, and then we'll put it. So that's why when you're going to log a bug from a QA, we would expect only this value from you, but not priority. So priority is optional from the QA. You need to put only severity value. So basically, we are going to talk about that categorization. And one last thing that you're going to say is, what is the sign off criteria? When are you going to sign off this project? How you are going to sign off this project? So there will be a different criteria being followed in different organizations. In my case, there should not be any severity 1 defects. So this should be 0. I should not have any severity 1 defects open. Everything should be fixed by my development team. There should not be any severity 2 defects. This also should be 0. But there could be a mutual agreement with the project team and the client that I can have less than or equal to 5 severity 3 issues, not more than 5. If it is more than 5, then again I cannot sign off. Like that's a criteria that's being followed for a while. So severity 3, 4, 5. Severity 4, actually any number. So there could be some 10 bucks, 20 bucks. That's fine. We'll let the client know, hey, these are the known issues and these are the simple ones. So we are going to address them in the next sprint or next release. So that's how we're going to sign off. So typically your test plan will talk about these many details. And that's why it needs an experience to write all this. And generally, like after spending some time, you would be able to do that. Definition of done, yes. So there are a lot of organizations are talking about definition of done. Actually, that is for any task. You need to be clear on what is the task completion criteria. So it differs from task to task. Can you tell who sign off? It's a test lead. And if you are the only member, then you will sign off. Who will discuss with team, BA team, or test manager? Who will discuss with BA team or test manager? I don't think, Chandana, the question is very clear. Who will discuss with? See if you can put the discuss with client. Okay. It's mostly the so business analyst job is done here actually, Frank. So their job is to go get more business to the company. So they will not be in the further phases of the life cycle. They'll only be here initial phase. And to answer any questions from the PM, they'll be till here. That's it. After that, they'll go hunt for new clients and for new business. But from here on, it's a PM. So if there are any questions for us, we'll ask PM or product owner, and product owner will ask client. Over a period of time, if you're working in the same product for a while, you even get to know who is the client, and you can even directly write an email also. It depends on the kind of relationship and how trust they. I mean, sometimes what happens over a period of time, they trust QA team because they feel the importance of the QA team, and they will directly encourage direct emails and answers directly to the QA. It's okay. Okay, so any questions in the design? Development team does a design and test team does a master test plan. Client will review both design and test plan because clients, again, I told you, clients give a lot of importance to QA deliverable MTP, like, to understand what is your strategy, how you're going to do it, how can I ensure the product is 0 bugs as much as possible. So they'll give importance to test plan as well. And if you are missing out anything, they might even call out, hey, you are missing one important scenario, which you should actually address that. So those kind of things. All right, so if it is a V1 project, if it is a brand new project, or if it is a UI intensive project, there's a lot of GUI going to get involved. It's very, the experiences from the last 20, 30 years in the industry says it's better to have a prototype. Prototype is like, let's say before you construct a big apartment or a big building, there is a plan or there is a mock-up for that, right? Similarly, before you build up a software system, a big enterprise system, it's strongly encouraged to come up with a prototype and discuss with your client or customer, kind of demo it, try to get address all the concerns and the questions from him, then go start about development of the project rather than directly jumping to the development and then the customer says, no, this is not I have expected. So it's a prototype is strongly encouraged. So how can we define a prototype? Prototype is nothing but a simulated copy of the real system, right? It's a simulation that we're going to do. And we have, there are many ways you can do. Like there is a technology called wireframes. There's a technology called, even in the PowerPoint presentations, you can actually use the advanced options, and you can actually create like screens So basically, it will have all the GUI screens of the system. Nothing will work, but you will clearly explain here are the this is where your company logo comes, this is where the company name comes, and here are the options for links for registrations and ordering, blah blah. So you can actually create a screen as if like a real system, but nothing works. There is no code behind it. It's only the UI screens. And this prototype should not take too much of time. It should be like very quick, some 3 to 4 business days, or max to max one sprint you're going to do for that, which is like 2 weeks, where you do the development and your testing team will validate it, and then we'll go and demo to the client. This is how we wanted to bring the system. I'm talking about a project which is like a 1 year project. A prototype should not take more than a week or 2 weeks of time, or a 6 months project for that matter. 6 months, we don't do it as a stretch. I'll explain in Agile. We'll do it like, multiple sprints, but just overall time I'm talking about. So it's strongly encouraged where there is a lot of UI. So who will do it? Development team will do it. Then what is a QA team? QA team will actually review the prototype, ensure is there any unexpected or unwanted things are coming up, or main things are missing out. So all that you'll actually call out. And then client ultimately demo to the client, and client review is important because we don't want to see any surprises at the end. Client saying like, this is not expected or that is not expected. Once a prototype is approved, then we will get into a phase called coding or development phase. This is where the development team will have major responsibility. So your whole project is divided into different modules, and the modules are divided into different uh, sub modules, and those sub modules are divided into smaller components. We call them as units. A unit is something like a smallest component of the system that cannot be further divided. For example, a page. A page itself can be a major component, but a page can be still further divided. Like here, suppose a web page, if you take, right? Sometimes this itself can be one unit, or no, there will be 3 frames in it. One frame will be here, another frame will be here, and this will be another frame. So this can be given to developer 1, this can be given to developer 2, and this can be given to developer 3. So they go and start writing the code for how this form should look like, and what are the components of this form. So we call these as smaller units. Unit is the smallest component in the system that cannot be further divided. And the developers will go write the code for each unit. They are not only responsible for writing the code, they are also responsible for code review. Like whatever developer 1 has developed, developer 2 will review. Whatever developer 2 has done, developer 1 will review. Of course, before you come for this is called peer review, a peer-to-peer review. But before even you do peer review, you need to do self-review. I mean, the same developer will review the code by himself and see, like, ensure he's not missing out anything. Then peer review. Then all the 3 developers will get into a conference and meeting, and then try to review each other code. That's like a team review. Let's assume there are 3 developers in the team. So they do team level review. So all this is going to happen. That is called code review or code walkthrough, code inspections. Yesterday I talked about static testing, right? So this is also one of the static testing technique. And majorly, they are responsible for unit testing also. So testing this individual unit is the responsibility of that corresponding developer. As a QA, we are not going to do any unit testing. Our job starts from the next level. But unit testing, even though it's like a testing, it's always done by the development team. Okay. And then what is the QA team is going to do at that time? When developers are busy writing the code, what is the QA team is going to do? The QA team is going to write, or kind of come up with all the test scenarios of how to test this form, similarly how to test this form, how can I test this whole unit after integration of these components. So we're going to come up with all the different test scenarios. We are going to come up with all the detailed test cases. So you need to be very clear on like what is scenario and what is a case. For example, logging into a system is a scenario. But while logging in, somebody tries to log in with a valid credentials, like valid username, valid password, and a valid OTP. Valid username, valid password, but OTP entered was, out of sync. The time is over. He's trying to enter the OTP after 30 seconds or 1 minute, which is out of sync. That's another scenario, another test case. A valid username, but an invalid password, but the OTP is correct. So that's another test case, right? Username itself is invalid, but password is correct and OTP is correct. So these are the different test cases. So login is a scenario, and these are all the different combinations of like test cases. So for every first is detailing out all the scenarios. That's what is practical. So from the next session, we're going to majorly focus on writing those scenarios and writing those test cases for a project. So that's going to be your major deliverables expected out of QA. So writing the detailed test scenarios and test cases, and of course, preparing the test data. Test data is also very important. For example, if I have to enter some, credit card number, expiry date, CVV number, it should be exactly the format which is expected by the banking or payment gateway system. I cannot have some just 4-digit number entered as a credit card number, 2-digit entered as like expiry date. I cannot do that. I have to do with the proper data. So that means we need to have a proper test data. Maybe your client may be provided, or he may ask you to, use some of the, valid credit cards or invalid credit cards. So we'll basically try to generate the test data and use it. Okay, so that's the major job from QA. When the developers are busy writing the code, you have full job of writing these scenarios, test cases. Some people even think about how do we automate them from here itself. So thinking about an automation strategy. Okay, now this is how the screens are going to come up. This is how the scenarios are going to come up. How do we prepare our automation cases? All that. So sometimes some clients will be interested to review the test cases, test scenarios, because they are going to perform user acceptance testing at the end, but it's not going to happen in all the projects. So you can think of like client will be kind of off in this phase. The next phase is very important. Once the development completes, we'll get into a phase called testing phase. Testing phase, or it's called stabilization phase. What happens in testing phases? Tester team comes into major, active mode where development team will give you a build for the testing. And when you get a build for the testing, the very first thing that you do is called a BVT, build verification test. In other terminologies, we call it like sanity test, smoke test. Basically, you will ensure, connect to the e-commerce system or the enterprise system that you're going to test. Try to access the different links and see they're all working, and it's not hanging, it's not any of the pages are not broken. A very high level check before you start a detailed testing. You will do a very high level testing on the build that is recently given by the development team, and we call it like a build verification test. It's also called a sanity test. It's also called smoke test. Once you do that, then you will do integration testing, then you'll do system testing, then you'll do full-fledged functional testing, whatever you planned in the test plan, security testing, load performance, stress testing, accessibility testing. Sometimes you do API testing, database testing. Then basically through all these testings, obviously you'll identify the bugs, things are not working as expected. Then you will go log them in the defect tracking tool with the kind of categorization that I have just explained, severity 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. And then you wait for those fix to happen. Once the development team fix them, then you will do something called regression testing. So ensure the fix did not really break other components, or the fix is actually fixed. The bug is really fixed or not first, and then it did not introduce any other new bugs. So that testing is called regression testing. So, and then somebody talked about defect lifecycle. Obviously, when you find the defect and all, there is a defect lifecycle will be followed. I'll explain that a little later. But like when we actually get into that practical mode of logging the bugs, I'll talk about that. But then there is something called triage meeting happens. So it's like, for example, test team has logged 100 bugs. It doesn't mean all of them 100 may or may not be bugs, right? Somebody without a complete knowledge, he thought it's a bug, but with the discussion with the PM and the client, it resulted out it's not really a major problem, or it's not really a bug, or you might have not logged with the correct severity. You thought everything is like severity 2, but certain things are severity 1 and certain things are severity 3. So to discuss that, there is a triage meeting happens. So who will be part of the triage meeting is PM, dev team, basically dev lead, test lead. Let me just write it over here. Triage meeting. When you have handful bugs, you can initiate this meeting from the QA side. Hey, we have logged some good number of bugs. Can we triage them? So dev lead will be there, PM will be there, test lead will be there, and sometimes we'll involve client or customer. If you're not very clear on certain things, we'll involve client or customer and try to explain the problem and try to get what is the priority for that. So what is the objective of this meeting? The triage meeting objective is first deciding whether it is a defect or not. Is this really a defect or not? That is one objective. Second, what is the severity of this? Whether the QA or the tester has provided correct severity or not. Then what is the priority? By when we should fix this? Should we fix it in this sprint only, or we can wait till next sprint? So what is the priority of that? So these three outcomes will be, these are the three outcomes from this triage meeting. That happens on weekly basis or alternative day basis, depending on how many bugs that are coming up. Client will not have any role here. So then what is the development team will be doing at that time? Development team will be fixing or resolving the defects identified by the QA team, or the test logs categorized by the test type, or the test logs categorized by the test type. Yes, I mean, see, okay, logging, right? That depends on, I mean, just to answer your question, it is yes, because we will be interested in different test logs when we are doing a performance testing. We are interested in the throughput, the response time, how much time it is taken to do the job. Those kind of logs we are interested in performance testing. In functional testing, we are interested in what is the exception that has occurred, why it did not log into the system, or why it actually threw the page not found error. So those kind of things we'll be interested in functional testing. So to answer your question, yes, logs will be different from test type to test type, but you can majorly categorize them as functional and non-functional. Okay, what is the job of development team at this stage when we are testing? So obviously they'll keep an eye on all the bugs that we are raising, and according to the categorization of the severity and the priority, they will be picking up the test cases and kind of fixing them and assign back to us, the owners of the bug, and we'll wait for the build, and then we'll do regression testing and confirm it's working and close it. After the test team completes all the planned activities, and as I told you, if you meet this sign-off criteria, then we will say the testing is completed and we are happy to sign off this, as there are no major issues, or it's meeting the criteria. Then we'll write a sign off email saying that we are signing off this. Then from the user side, client side, somebody has to do a verification before putting it into production, and that is called user acceptance testing. So who will do it? Users will perform the UAT. From the user side, client side, they will perform the user acceptance testing. Of course, all these things will be in a different environment. So this will be in UAT environment. What we tested is a SIT environment or ST environment, where dev does is a development environment. So each environment will be different, because you cannot use the same environment for development and testing, because development is like for the developers and do unit testing. And test environment is for us. Production is live environment. UAT is like a pre-prod, correct? People also call it like pre-prod, different names. People also call it like beta also. So beta environment, there are different names to it. In that environment, the users are going to perform the testing. So they would also prepare some scenarios and they will perform the testing. If they encounter any issue during the UAT, we should be the one to support them because we have the full knowledge of testing the system very recently. So we should support and see if whether we are also able to get the same issue in our SIT environment, ST environment. If we are also getting the issue, that means it's a miss from our side. That's a later part, but we should inform the developers how to repro, and we are also getting it. Then the development team will fix it. Then after they fix it, we'll have to do regression test it, and then again you will sign off, and then again users will perform. Yeah, now it's working fine. So all that will go until the issues will be fixed, and then users will confirm saying that UAT is completed and it's good to go for production. So there will be a small meeting happens called go no go meeting to decide whether we should go to production or not. After that, it will go into production. See, in this whole thing, we are missing one important team called operations team. They are the one who will actually deploy the code into ST environments, UAT environments, production environments, and from there they'll ensure the environments are up and running 24/7 all the time. So that team is called operations team, or you can see some of the organizations call it like DevOps team, right? So that is what it is. So in live production, what happens during the production day, during the deployment, both dev and QA will be in the office maybe for a couple of hours. And post deployment, you'll just do a very high level non-transactional PVT. What is meant by non-transactional PVT is you won't create any records because it's a live environment. All you do is if you have an access, you'll open the production link, just ensure all the links and things are working fine before we send out an email to the client saying it's ready, users it's ready. So you do something called non-transactional PVT, and yeah, so from there what happens now, the real users will be using the system. While using the system, they might encounter certain things. Oh, it would have been better if this report is in a different format, or it would be better to have some more enhancements. So then they will come up with something called, in software terminology, we call them as change request, or we generally call it as software change request, or we call it like enhancement, or they might even encounter some bugs also. Hopefully we don't expect that because I've already explained you the cost, how it is going to be. They might encounter some bugs also, unfortunately. Staging is also, yeah, staging is also anything like pre-prod, correct? It's like a pre-prod. It could be change order or altogether a new requirement, correct? So it could be totally a new change request, or it could be a new enhancement, or it could be a bug for that, or they might say, no, this is not I've expected, this is what I've expected, and then we also agree that it's a miss from our side. Any of those things will be again planned for the next sprint, and it's like a maintenance. And yesterday somebody was asking like what happens in maintenance and all. In simple, every CR or every enhancement will again go through an initial phase, a requirement phase, a design phase if required, a prototype phase if required, if it's a very big change, then a coding, and then testing, a UAT, and then production. So in a way, every single requirement will go through all these phases again. That means you will again come up with a test strategy, then you will come up with the test cases, and then you'll perform them and sign off. Users will do the UAT testing. So all that's going to happen for every single CR. So, but I told you like most of the 70% of the projects what we do today is all maintenance projects. That means this V1 is already developed and deployment completed. Now we are getting some enhancements or some bug fixes or some new asks from the client, and we are taking them as a smaller sprints. and doing the requirement, design, development, testing, and signing off. All right, so this is what typical it is. So I'll share this in an email. So this will be very useful when you go for an interview. What you need to focus here is that there is one important question people will ask in the interview. What is the entry and exit criteria for a design? When will you enter into a design phase and when will you exit from a design phase? The entry criteria for the design is that your SRS or spec should be completed. Document of functional specification should be completed. That's the entry criteria. What is exit criteria? Exit criteria is that design should be complete. Master test plan should be complete. Then we will actually exit from the design. So like that, you need to have for every phase. What is the entry criteria for a coding phase? Design should complete or prototype should complete. And exit case is that unit testing is completed. Then all the test cases are ready. Then we'll exit from the design, the development phase. So I'll share this Excel. So keep it as a handy when you go for an interview. So you don't need to really, search for this information all the time. All right, so go with this for today. So in the next class, we'll talk about Agile and then we'll get into practical of writing test scenarios, test cases, etc. All right, cool. Any questions? All right, then I'll share this in the email. Team will send you in the email and just go through it once. Thanks, everyone.